Right now, you're carrying pictures of George Washington. One of these were some quarters.
Or maybe you live in the city named after him, or in the state. You certainly take President's Day off, which officially celebrates Washington's birthday. Not all the other presidents, just him.
There are good reasons we remember a man who's been dead over 200 years. His service as Commander-in-Chief, his service as President, and his character.
In April 1775, the Continental Congress decided that America's grievances with Great Britain had to be settled on the battlefield. The 13 colonies needed an army and a commander-in-chief. George Washington was a delegate to the Continental Congress from Virginia. He had fought in the French and Indian War as a colonel in the Virginia militia. This was his uniform then. In 1775, he wore it to Congress to show that he was ready to fight again. His colleagues picked him for the job. The Revolutionary War would last 8.5 years, longer than World War II and the Civil War put together. Here are the battles Washington fought. Long Island and White Plains, defeats. Trenton and Princeton, victories. Brandywine and Germantown, 2 more defeats. Monmouth, a draw. Yorktown, victory. That makes 4 defeats, 1 draw, and 3 victories. That's not the record of Alexander the Great or Julius Caesar or Napoleon, commanders who seemed to win whenever they fought. But war is not the World Series. It's not best of 7. You can lose most of your battles, but if you win enough of them, and if your enemy loses heart, you win in the end, which is what Washington did. As important as the battles he fought was the effect he had on his men. Washington was 6'3", and he looked good on horseback. He put his presence to work time and again. One description of him comes from John Howland, a Revolutionary War veteran remembering a firefight he had been in as a teenager. After the British lost the Battle of Trenton, Washington knew they would try to take the town back. The British showed up at dusk. John Howland described the retreat. The bridge was narrow, and our platoons were crowded into a dense and solid mass. On the far side of the bridge sat Washington on his horse. As Howland crossed, he bumped into Washington's horse in his boot. The horse stood as firm as the rider and seemed to understand that he was not to quit his post. Howland doesn't say so, but he understood it too. That brief touch told him, "My commander is here. I can do what I have to." Woody Allen said that 80% of celebrity is showing up. 100% of leadership is showing up at the right time in the right place. And if you lose, you show up again and again and again until you prevail. After the war, America ratified a new constitution. For first president, the country turned to its war hero, George Washington. He was inaugurated in New York City in April 1789. Washington had no examples to guide him. Almost every other country in the world was ruled by a monarch. The only republics in history were tiny or long gone. Everything Washington did would be brand new. His responsibilities were outlined in the Constitution, but even that was vague sometimes. Article 2, Section 2 said the President can make treaties by and with the advice and consent of the Senate. Consent was spelled out. Every treaty needed a 2/3 vote to pass. But how did a president get the Senate's advice? Washington's first treaty was with Alexander McGillivray, the mixed-race chief of the Creek Indians who lived in what is now Alabama. He led hundreds of warriors and had sided with Britain during the Revolution. It was important to be on his good side. Washington took the draft of a treaty to the Senate chamber in Federal Hall in New York. We know what happened thanks to the diary of Senator William McClay of Pennsylvania. Washington sat at the head of the room and gave the draft treaty to Vice President John Adams to read aloud. A senator interrupted. There was too much noise in the street. Could we close the windows? Then another senator interrupted. This treaty refers to earlier treaties with other Indians. Could we see those treaties so we know what we were talking about? Then a third senator said, it will take too long for all of us to read those treaties. Can we give them instead to a committee, which will make a report? A fourth senator objected to committees. They gave too much power to small groups. A fifth senator said committees are used in every legislature in the world. At this point, Washington stood up and said, this defeats every purpose of my coming here. But the debate went on. On Monday, Washington came and heard the discussion to its end. But as he left the Senate, the doorkeeper overheard him say he would be damned if he ever came there again. And no president ever has. Some have asked for the Senate's written advice on treaties, others have consulted informally. But Washington learned that treaty-making is best done by the president himself. Then the Senate can vote up or down. Washington did more than shape the government. He gave America lessons in self-government. The hardest came in his second term, and it began with whiskey. Americans drank a lot of whiskey, and the new federal government taxed it. But distillers who lived on the frontier didn't like the tax and wouldn't pay it. The whiskey tax was so unpopular in western Pennsylvania that in 1794, the local militia fought a gun battle with the federal tax collector. 2 people were killed. The frontier blazed up in revolt. Washington sent 15,000 troops over the Allegheny Mountains after giving the rebels several months to cool off. In the end, there was no fighting. 2 rebels were convicted of treason. Washington pardoned them both. But Washington did more than send in the troops. He explained the principle of self-government. The whiskey rebels said they were like the American Revolution, defying an unjust tax. Washington disagreed. The American Revolution was about taxes passed for us in London. The whiskey rebels defied taxes passed by us in Congress. Washington said, if the laws are to be so trampled upon, there is an end put at one stroke to Republican government. For some other man may dislike another law and oppose it until all laws are prostrate and everyone will carve for himself. If laws are bad, then change them. And in fact, the whiskey tax was repealed 7 years later. But don't take up arms in the meantime. Freedom is not a free-for-all. What most impressed everyone who knew Washington was not his military record or his presidency, but his character. Abigail Adams, John's wife, called Washington polite, affable, modest, and wise, then said, if he was not really one of the best-intentioned men in the world, he might be a very dangerous one. Washington proved his good intentions by going home to Mount Vernon when he finished his job, and by doing it twice. In December 1783, after the Revolutionary War ended, he surrendered his military commission to Congress. In September 1796, in the home stretch of his second term, he announced that he would not run for a third. Since there were no presidential term limits then, he could have kept running for the rest of his life. But once again, he chose to go home. Why was this special? Isn't this what every American general or politician does? That's what our laws say. But laws are paper until people actually choose to follow them. Many revolutionaries since Washington made other choices. Napoleon and Hitler ruled until they lost world wars. Lenin, Stalin, and Mao died in power in bed. Fidel Castro ruled Cuba for 47 years, then gave power to his brother, Raul. The Kim family has been ruling North Korea for 63 years. Washington was different. He left the ultimate power to others. He explained what he was doing the first time he retired as commander-in-chief. In June 1783, he sent a farewell message to all the state governors called the Circular to the States. In it, he described the natural wealth of the United States, a vast tract of continent, abounding with all the necessaries and conveniencies of life. He talked about our social and cultural advantages, living at a time when the rights of mankind were better understood and more clearly defined than at any former period.
Then Washington said, if Americans should not be completely free and happy, the fault will be entirely their own. In other words, I've done all I could. I've done all I was asked. The rest is up to you. It's up to us, every day, every year.